Good afternoon, everybody. This is February 15th, 2023. My birthday today. Yes, thank you very much. I'm 22 for the 37th time. So, for all you math whizzes out there, yes, I am 59. Um, I don't, it's just a number to me. My biological age is 59. I feel like I'm 22, and my wife tells me I act like I'm 12. So, go figure. It's a spectrum. So, anyway, I've had a lot of positive feedback on these little videos, and I guess the people who are 22 only just a few times call these vlogs. I guess that's what the young kids call them, is vlogs. So it's a vlog, and so I'm going to do them continuous now. And I think what I'm going to call this series is Self-Evident Truth. This is going to be the first maiden voyage of the self-evident truth vlog. Now, self-evident truth. Our founding fathers said that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness were self-evident truth. Natural law. Well, who controls natural law? Well, God controls natural law, right? Man controls statutes, and God controls natural law. And that's why our founders put in our Constitution these little checks and balances that were natural law checks and balances, because they knew that if all of Congress voted tomorrow for gravity to be gone, no one's going to float to the sky like a China balloon, right? That's just not going to happen. And so they wanted those checks and balances, part of those checks and balances, part of that limit on government that chains government, to be God's law, law that's self-evident truth, natural law. Now, because it's my birthday and I'm 22 for the 37th time, show you a little T-shirt that my daughter and my son-in-law got me for Christmas, and it says, "Grumpy old vet, I do what I want." So, so this is the self-evident truth with the GOV, grumpy old vet. Doesn't stand for government, stands for grumpy old vet. And what is a vet? Well, right here, we got veteran. What is a veteran? It's a pronoun, right? Or it's a noun. It's a person who wrote a blank check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including one's life. That's what a vet is. So I'm a vet. I actually wore a uniform, and I actually was in military vehicles. Unlike our sheriff, I don't dress in a military uniform and drive around in a Humvee without giving a blank check of one's life to the United States. But hey, whatever, to each his own. Um, we're gonna cover a few things. I wanted this to be a short video, but I don't know that I can do it short. We've got a few things to cover in today's uh, video. One of the things Madison tells us about keeping well, first let's go back to what Franklin. I like a lot of the things Franklin said. He had a lot of anecdotes that really emphasized true principles. And when he was leaving the State House, a woman walked up to him and she said, "So, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us?" And he said, "Madam, you have a republic if you can keep it." Now, through the 20th century, we forgot how to keep it. Now, Madison gives us in Federalist 10 one of the best ways to keep the republic. He explains the republic. He tells us what the enemy of all popular government is, which is faction, right? And that's what we've got going on right now in Hillsdale, two factions, and it's the fight is eating up. So one of the things he said is to keep your government, these people that you hire in your government, because we the people are the government. These people are just holding these places for us as employees, as servants to the public. One of the ways to keep them in good behavior is through the tool of shame, no different than you do with your children. If your children are doing bad, you want them to change their behavior, and so you shame them. And when they change their behavior and do better, then you cheer them, right? So we can't forget that we've got to praise good behavior as well as uh, uh, shame bad behavior. Now, for 2 years in the Republican Party, none of our elected officials came. None of the ones that are suing us came. They just didn't want to participate. And when they were asked why they didn't want to participate, they said, well, we don't feel comfortable there. You don't feel comfortable. How many children feel comfortable being shamed when they're in bad behavior? That's right. So why do you think they didn't want to come for 2 years? Why do you think they felt uncomfortable? The other thing is, why are you going to run for political office if you think it's always going to be sunshine and roses? You don't think you're going to come into contact with people that have a contrary opinion, or people that might have different uh, principles, or different philosophy? And you raised your hand and said you'd run, but yet you thought it was going to be sunshine and roses every day? Hello. But that's not what it really is. It's really about power, isn't it? It's about power. It's about them ascending to the leaders and us being the subjects under them. Well, we fought a war with England some years ago because we didn't want to be subjects under the king. In fact, the Lee Resolution of July 2nd, 1776, said that we are no longer subjects under the king, but subjects under the law, and all must be under the law. That's kind of an interesting thing. Now, I'm going to get into this point right now. I was going to do this later, but let's get into this point right now. Congratulations to Joe Hendee. He just found out yesterday that all the charges were dropped against him on this First Amendment political witch hunt that he was put on. Let's go through a little history on that, shall we? Because history is good. Patrick Henry said, I have but one lamp to guide my steps, and that's the lamp of experience. I know no way to judge of the future but by the past. So let's use the lamp of the past, lamp of history, to see where our footsteps are going to take us on this, okay? So if you recall, Kelly Mapes ran against Mark Wiley. A lot of her information got somehow FOIA'd from the health department, and way more information than what's ever given was given. It was handed to someone that has a Facebook following, and she handed that off to somebody else to put it out there for the dirt because she was running for mayor, didn't want her name attached to it. My question is still, how did she get it? I don't know, maybe keeping the sheriff happy had something to do with her getting a hold of it. But anyway, I digress. Kelly ran against Wiley. All her information gets put out there in a smear campaign. She said some things back, which she has a First Amendment right to do. Some people got butthurt about it and decided to file a lawsuit on her. And so they filed a criminal complaint. Now, this criminal complaint, if I'm not mistaken, came from Mark Wiley's wife, Shelley Wiley, who works at the hospital with J.J. Hodshire. First, they charged her with a misdemeanor, and then a little while later, they charged her with a felony. And then right after that, Joe Hendee then made a complaint about this person that was running for mayor that said some very inappropriate things to him online, no different than what Kelly did, First Amendment. So he thought he'd test the waters. So he went to the state police. State police laughed at him, said, that's a First Amendment thing. We're not even going to take that complaint. And he went to the city police. City police wouldn't take it. And then they said it had to be the county. So everybody was throwing it around like a hot potato. Finally, the county said, yeah, we'll take a complaint on it. It went to Neil Brady, whose funding agent is Mark Wiley. And Neil Brady miraculously used his discretionary power to not prosecute. But then shortly after that, Joe gets charged with a felony for First Amendment things that he said, right, on his Truth or Consequences page. So one little point I forgot to add in here is also Joe yesterday had sent an email to Neil Brady. Oddly enough, Joe's blocked on Neil Brady's official government email. That's also a First Amendment violation. Seems that Neil Brady has a problem understanding what the First Amendment says and what it means. He took an oath. He's not honoring it. So you see where this is all going. You see how this is happening. So Kelly got a lawyer, Mr. Stickney, and Joe hired Darren Wisely to represent him. Now, Mr. Stickney went to Wiley and said, this is unethical. You should have had a special prosecutor. Neil, you shouldn't have done this. You know it. I know it. We all know it. Best thing you can do is drop charges on Kelly. And so what did he do? He dropped the charges on Kelly. After he dropped the charges on Kelly, though, he did express how Mr. Wiley would be very upset about that. Well, why would Mr. Wiley be very upset about that if this wasn't political speech, if this wasn't a political witch hunt? Okay, but they kept the charges on Joe, and they kept pushing it. So Joe and his lawyer went to court, and Joe's lawyer subpoenaed Rebecca Burns to court. Well, Rebecca Burns didn't show up, and the hearing got all messed up, and the courts was trying to explain how they've got unwritten local court rules. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Unwritten local court rules. And so they set the hearing up for another time. I believe it was within a week. And so Mr. Wisely decided to subpoena not only Rebecca Burns, but Mark Wiley as well. So he subpoenaed those two. The trial started. Mr. Wiley never showed up. Neither did Rebecca Burns. Neither one of them. Seems the law doesn't pertain to them. They can do what they want. They're in positions of power, right? We're the subjects under them. They're the royalty. They're the new nobility, right? The oligarchs, an oligarchy. So they didn't show up. So the first thing that Mr. Wiley did was he said to Megan Stuyvesant, Judge Stuyvesant, well, Your Honor, then I'd like to have a warrant for the arrest of Rebecca Burns and Mark Wiley for failure to appear on a subpoena. Instantly, Judge Stuyvesant, under Judicial Canon 2, and she knew it, she said, I'm going to have to recuse myself because Mr. Wiley is my funding agent. And that was proper. She did need to recuse herself. But what was proper is Neil should have recused himself a long time ago. He should have said it to a special prosecutor because the special prosecutor wouldn't have touched it either. They would have said this is First Amendment. But we all kind of suspect, don't we, that where was Neil getting the pressure from? Maybe he has the same funding agent. So where do you think he was getting the pressure from? The other odd thing is we also had witnesses that we were going to bring forward that Shelley Wiley, Mark Wiley's wife, while she was prepping a patient at the hospital, right after Joe got arrested and his charges were brought on him by Donna Letcher, Mark Wiley's neighbor, Shelley was bragging to the other nurse that was helping prep the patient that she'd got another one arrested. How did she get another one arrested? I thought it was Donna Letcher that brought the complaint. I thought it was Donna Letcher that was so scared to death because of what Joe had said, Paige, that she had to file a criminal complaint. Or was it Mrs. Wiley? Or was it Mark? Odd thing is, as soon as Megan Stuyvesant recused herself, I had to go to the Region 2 State Court Administrator's office, and it did. And they reassigned another judge, which was a district court judge out of Lenawee County. And as soon as that judge got it, the first order of business in front of that judge would have been to issue arrest warrants for Mark Wiley and Rebecca Burns. But guess what happened? Neil Brady filed instantly a nolo prosecule, which means they're withdrawing the prosecution. So they dropped the charges right then. Why did they drop the charges? Did they not want a judge out of Hillsdale County to actually do the right thing and file an arrest warrant on Mark Wiley and Rebecca Burns for failure to appear? Well, the nobility can't attack the nobility, now can they? See, this is why when they're in bad behavior, we're supposed to use the tool of shame. Does it make any question in your mind why They didn't show up for the Republican Party for 2 years because they didn't want us to use the tool of shame on them to keep them in good behavior. They don't want their behavior to be changed. They like to be spoiled brats, like children get when their behavior is not controlled. The other thing is, anything that they did that was good, we couldn't praise them for because, again, they never showed up. Isn't that interesting? So that's where a lot of this faction fight between the two factions, the Blue Dog Democrat moderate Republicans, which are in charge in Hillsdale. Mark Wiley himself admits that he's not a Republican. That's just where he hangs his hat. That's why they didn't. That's why they don't like the America First faction of the Republican Party. The conservative constitutionalists, the ones that love their country, the ones that actually wrote a blank check with their life, right? The ones that took an oath and meant it. That's why they have a problem with this. So yesterday, that brings me into this. Yesterday, I get this filed on me. Isn't that beautiful? Now, 17 exhibits, 17 exhibits on this, okay? So Brent Leininger's law firm, Dewey, Cheatham, and Now, I just call them that affectionately. They're actually Warner, Necross, and Judd, LLP, but I'll just call them my pet name, which is Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, filed a plaintiff's motion for summary disposition under Michigan Court Rule 2.116C10. Now, Michigan Court Rule 2.116C10 is also one of the court rules that I filed to have the case thrown out. But of course, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe had my motion rendered moot by the judge. And so C10 says, except as to the amount of damages, there is no genuine issue as to any material fact. And the moving party is entitled to judgment or partial judgment as a matter of law. Okay, that's what they're filing the plaintiff's motion for summary disposition under. Okay, now let me just read you. This is just the short part. I'll read you this. It says, Plaintiff, Hillsdale County Republican Party Executive Committee, the HCREC, respectfully requests that this court enter judgment in its favor and against defendants pursuant to MCR 2.116C10. Basically, all they want is their money back because JJ has spent, we believe it's JJ, that's who we've been told it was, has spent, this has got to be somewhere upwards of $40,000, $50,000 now at this point in time. You know, they don't work for free. And so we'll go to the next page. It says, there is no genuine dispute of material facts. No, there's lots of dispute over the material facts, y'all. Lots of dispute. So that in and of itself is an untrue statement. A, the actions of defendants Darren Wisely, Lance Lashway, John Smith, Jon-Paul Rutan, Josh Gritzmaker on July 28th, 2022. I noticed they left Belle Steyer's name out of there. So maybe after all this time, they finally figured out she had nothing to do with this. They sued her unjustly, ruined her name, drug her name through the dirt unjustly, just because she was part of the America First faction. But anyway, I digress. On July 28th, 2022, purportedly to remove duly elected delegates and members of the HCREC were improper and not allowed under Michigan election law, the Michigan Republican State Committee, here and after MIGOP, bylaws, and the HCREC bylaws. Okay, now the bylaws they've got stated are old bylaws. And how would they know that we've got new bylaws? Well, they wouldn't because they haven't showed up for 2 years, right? Go figure. If you don't show up, things happen when you're not present. And so under those bylaws, if they haven't paid their dues, and none of them have, if they haven't showed up to any meetings, which none of them have, if they haven't been on one of the get out the vote committees, and they haven't, and if they haven't been in one of the committees, in one of the standing committees, and actually got their hands dirty, did some work, which none of them that are suing us did, then they're not in good standing. If they're not in good standing, then we were absolutely by the bylaws by the way we did it. Now, did we follow the bylaws completely? I don't know. I don't know if anybody can do that perfectly. For the last 10 years I've gone, I have never seen us follow the bylaws to the letter. It's pretty tough because the bylaws are pretty thick. I think they need to be simplified a lot more. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, nobody's followed the bylaws to the T. Everybody's done the best that they could do, but we haven't followed it to the T. So they're saying on the August 25th, 2022 special meeting of the HCREC was validly noticed and held. That is not true. They didn't follow the bylaws there either. Now, they've got proofs in there and say that all of us were contacted. I didn't get anything about that August 25th meeting. And a lot of other people didn't either, and they're willing to testify to that. Now they say, well, we've got where we sent the emails, okay, but also on your paper it says that it wasn't confirmed that it was received. There's a reason for that, right? Okay, because probably we didn't receive it by their own paperwork. The other thing is Jonathan Lindsay, Senator Lindsay, was supposed to be invited to that meeting, never was. The other thing is Mike Shirkey was allowed to vote at that meeting. He's not allowed to vote at that meeting. So did they follow the bylaws? No, they sure didn't. So two wrongs don't make a right, correct? And so we can't go, okay, what degree? See, the law doesn't look at it like that. The law looks at it as it's called the doctrine of unclean hands. If they've done some things wrong, they can't turn around and accuse us of doing the same wrong, and somehow one has a higher degree of the other. Now, as far as it goes to the, they say that we violated election law. Well, there's a little thing called Michigan Campaign Finance, and if they are the HCREC, as they claim to be, then in January they were supposed to file who donated the money to their group and where that money was paid out to, such as Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and that was never reported. That's a violation of the Michigan Campaign Finance Act, which is part of the election law. So they're going to claim that we violated election law. They violated election law too. In fact, they tried to file a criminal complaint on us, and it went to the Attorney General's office, and they declined to prosecute. But we never filed a criminal complaint on them. We didn't sue them because we knew there was an administrative process. We were more than willing to go through the administrative process, but they weren't. Why do you think they didn't want to go through the administrative process? And first they tried criminal so that it was free. Their prosecution against us was free, a lot like it was on Kelly and Joe. Prosecution against them was free. Mark Wiley didn't have to spend a dime to go after his political enemies. Well, why do you think they did the same thing? They were going after their political enemies, going to try to use a Democrat Attorney General's office to do so when they had Republican administrative relief. What's that tell you? That should say volumes to you, right? The other thing is that they have in here, the individuals elected as officers of the HCREC at the August 25th, 2022 special meeting are the recognized leadership of the Hillsdale County Republican Party with all powers vested under Michigan law, the MIGOP bylaws, and the HCREC bylaws until their successors are duly elected and seated. Okay, first off, we had a letter from Ron Weiser that said that they were illegitimate and that meeting was illegitimate. So they were not the duly elected officers at that point in time. They were not the duly elected officers, and they were not recognized as the officers until Ron Weiser's letter in December. But they started this lawsuit in October. So they weren't the HCREC, were they? So there's some dispute over that. Now, the judge's last order was that he was going to leave it up to MIGOP to decide the credentialing. Now, that whole fight's not over yet. Credentialing had a tough time because they didn't have all the information, and this has got a lot of twists and turns to it. And they only had so much time to meet. Now they're letting all of us, America First delegates, which I'm not one of, go to the state convention and all the alternates. And they said that they would recognize Brent Leininger as the chair of the Hillsdale County Republican Party at this point. That's not the final say. See, the whole body of delegates gets to say, and they just might. So that's yet to be seen, right? But they want to take us to court on March 6th. And the defendants are not authorized to act on behalf of the Hillsdale County Republican Party or the HCREC since November 17th. All of those above named have not. Defendants are not authorized to hold themselves out as officers or leadership of the Hillsdale County Republican Party or the HCREC. And as of November 17th, we haven't. Accordingly, plaintiffs are entitled to summary disposition. This motion is supported by the accompanying brief, which isn't brief at all, which is incorporated herein by reference. Basically, all they want is their money back. Why? Because they tried criminal prosecution first, where they don't have to spend any money to go after their political enemies. Now they've got somebody to spend $40,000 to $50,000 for them to go after their political enemies. And why? Why? Because they're bratty, snotty-nosed little kids. Why? Because they've avoided the tool of shame. Their behavior is out of control. And so thereby, when children get to that point, when you don't discipline children properly, they become bratty, snotty-nosed little kids. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. So I hope this video, it's a little longer than I wanted to do, but this has been the self-evident truth with the grumpy old vet. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. I don't know if it's going to be weekly or monthly or when certain special events happen. So, but I'm going to try to keep everybody informed. We're going to try to keep going along with this. And with that, have a great day.